All right, hey there, folks. Well, it's great to be back out there doing conventions and readings, seeing everyone in person again. But since we can't go to them all, I figured I'd keep bringing book tour to you. So, welcome to Russ's Rockin Rollercoaster, Season 8, intriguing interviews with creative minds. Now, for someone who loves comic books as much as I do, I didn't start reading them actually until I got to college. But once I did, I never let go. And when it comes to all sorts of pulpy goodness, well, I'm definitely your guy, which is why I'm thrilled to welcome back tonight's guest, Bob Greenberger. Bob is your classic jack of all trades in the fiction business, having worked for Starlog Press, DC Comics, Gist Communications, Marvel Comics, and Weekly World News. A member of the Science Fiction Writers of America and the International Association of Media Tie-in Writers. Bob is the writer and editor of more than 100 projects, and his novelization of Hellboy 2, The Golden Army, won the Scribe Award in 2009. A big influence on my own career, Bob also helped co-found the active and expanding author collective Crazy 8 Press, of which I am also a member, and continues to pump out new projects. Welcome back, Bob.
Hi, good evening, Russ. How are you?
All right, good to see you. All right, a heads up to the folks at home. Feel free to send me notes or questions you have for me or Bob in the chat box during the show, and we'll get to a few at the end. Okay, Bob, as we always do, we'll start at the beginning. So where were you born? Where'd you grow up?
It all began at a 5,000-watt radio station in Fresno, California. No, wait, that's not my life. Started, born and raised on Long Island, and when I was 6 years old, I was
where on Long Island?
I'm sorry, Jericho, Nassau County.
Yep. Okay, close to me. Yeah. Okay.
And when I was 6, I was laid up in bed with my annual bout of bronchitis because I was asthmatic as a child, and I was stuck in bed, and Mom gave me a Superman comic, and that sort of like was my window into a whole other reality. And from there,
okay, well, we're gonna stick with that. Don't lose that. We're gonna go there, but I want to go back just a little bit. So you were in Jericho till you were 6, and then what happened?
Well, I mean, I was in Jericho until I went to college.
That's what I thought you said. You were there until you were. So you were in Jericho your whole childhood.
Yeah. Whole childhood.
Oh, okay. Okay, so
yep.
Hold on. All right. So what did your folks do?
Dad was a salesman for IBM.
Okay.
And my mom had been a high school English teacher. Yeah, no, middle school English teacher, and gave it up when she got pregnant with me, and then became a classic housewife.
Okay. Okay. So it was just you, no brothers, no sisters?
No, my brother is 4 years younger, and my sister is 6 years younger.
Okay, so you're the oldest of 3. Because at that age, there's a little bit, there's some gap there. Were you guys close at all?
What's funny is there are some things my brother and I share in common, but my sister and I are very much, almost a lot of the same interests. We get on the phone and we can talk about the same books we've read without realizing we both read them, that sort of thing.
Was that always the case?
It was movies and TV early on, Broadway, a lot of Broadway. My sister Judy was very much into Broadway theater music as a kid without performing any of it. Right. Listening to it and singing along. I was more the theater guy. And to this day, we share a lot of commonalities. So very different dynamics with both of them.
Right, so probably because there was 6 years difference between the two of you, so you probably never went to the same school, so you didn't have. Or did you?
Yeah, and complicating that was as my brother and sister were starting high school, my family relocated to California when I was already in college.
Which was where?
Well, I went to the State University of New York at Binghamton.
Binghamton, that's right.
And then my family moved to the San Fernando Valley in California. My dad took a job at a bank out there. And it meant that I saw my siblings very infrequently. And of course, this is back when they charged exorbitant rates for long distance phones. So you'd have to do it on the weekend before Sunday at 5 when the rates changed.
That's right. I remember that. Wow. Yeah. Okay. So, but as younger kids though, so you and your sister, there was enough distance where there was kind of real no competition socially because you were kind of in different places.
Right. And my brother was like my father, more into sports and stuff. So his friends were more into, football and basketball, and I really wasn't. The only sport I really paid attention to was baseball, and my dad and I would, watch Met games, and he took me out to Shea Stadium on many an occasion.
Right.
Um,
And despite the fact that you're a Met fan, I still let you on the show.
it's because I pay your bills.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Um,
Was your brother
interesting
also,
that,
was your brother also a Mets fan?
very much so.
Okay.
I talk baseball all the time, but he was interested in all the other sports, and I never picked up that interest.
Okay. So all right. So there's the three of you. You were young. You got laid up, and your mom gave you a Superman comic, and that sort of opened up a whole world to you. So as a
Yeah, so this is
what was that like?
1964.
So what was that like for you?
Yeah, it was like, what is this? I'd seen nothing like it before. I sort of vaguely connected it to the Sunday Color comics from the Long Island Press, and this is like, what is all this stuff? And then they brought me another one, and then I started getting allowance or gift money and was buying comics, because back then they were 12 cents. It was easy.
Right.
Every time I saw my grandma Carrie, she always gave me a quarter and said, "Go buy a joke book." That's what she always called the comics.
the joke books. Okay.
Yeah. So back then, the quarter got me 2 comics. I was happy.
Right. So you started off with Superman. Was that your first love? Does that continue to be like that first love, or did you sort of, what was kind of your thing?
This is 64. So, I'm reading the Superman comics, and then I discovered there's Batman and the Justice League and Green Lantern and all that stuff. And over time, I really found myself gravitating more to the Justice League, Green Lantern, Flash, Hawkman books. And these are all the ones edited by Julie Schwartz. So there was an editorial approach to the material that really, I gravitated to the art and the story and the characters. And then in January 1966, it's like Batman hits ABC, and my mind explodes.
Right. Oh yeah. So when Batman came on, and I was it was a little, I didn't see it in the original, I saw it in the reruns, but I was a huge addict back then. Did you continue to read comics at that point, or did you
Absolutely.
Oh, you were? Okay. So that just it fostered the love more.
Yeah, I mean, what's funny is, I get my first comic when I'm in, it's 1964. By 1965, right around the time of the blackout in the fall of 65, apparently I'd gotten my hands on too many comic books in the house, and they were cluttering my room, which I shared with my brother at the time. And my mother said, "Too many, got to get rid of them."
Oh no.
My best friend Jeff and I, to this day, remember how, with tears in my eyes, I take this stacks down to the garage, into the garbage cans. So a lot of people remember the 65 blackout. My friend Jeff and I always talk about the 65 throwout.
Oh no. Oh God. Do you think that in that collection there was anything that by today's standards that would be considered like a classic run or super valuable?
Well, you think about it, this is prime Silver Age material. There must have been a bunch of number ones, and early appearances of key supporting players. I would be hard pressed to tell you which ones they were.
Right.
Only a couple stand out in memory. But once I started up my collection again, and this time my brother had been moved into a different room and I had more space.
Right.
The collection grew, and I was able to go. I started at some point in the late 60s going to the Nassau Farmers Market, which was near Grumman.
Right.
The guy selling back issues, and I'd fill in what I missed or had thrown out.
And you bought yourself an industrial size safe so your mom couldn't make you throw them out again.
No, what's interesting is in Hicksville there was an unfinished furniture store.
Right.
And I remember distinctly my mom and dad taking me there. We picked out one to hold all of my comics. And then my father, who really wasn't particularly handy, he and I stained it and polyurethaned it, so that it would endure and handle all the comics. And then I grew that, and then started boxes in the closet.
That's right. Yeah, the long white boxes. I got them upstairs. Did at any point did you, even as you got older, say to your mom, like, Mom, I cannot believe that you made me chuck out those books?
I don't think so. I mean, my mom and I fought about a lot of stuff.
But not that.
You know, it definitely resulted in my getting my first ulcer in high school.
Oh, geez.
It was great because it was a family friend who was the doctor who diagnosed me, and I came home and said, "It's your fault."
Oh, jeez. Oh, Lord. So you were definitely a comics reader. Were you reading fiction as well? You know, prose?
I was starting to, sure. I mean, there was the My Weekly Reader book club that
Mhm.
they subscribed to, and
Sure.
books through school, plus the bookmobile would come. So I
Yeah.
was definitely getting things like Lester Del Rey's The Runaway Robot. I just remember that book in particular. You know, my interest in science fiction was apparent. So my father's brother, Uncle Bud, provided me these junior novelizations of Tom Corbett's Space Cadet, which I gather was a 50s television series. So I was definitely being fed
Right.
prose on top of the comics.
Right. Now, speaking of science fiction, that was going to be my next question. I mean, obviously, as life went on, Star Trek became a bigger part of your life. Right here, did you watch Star Trek in its original run?
During its original run, it was on past my bedtime.
Okay.
And there was one night I distinctly recall coming down to the kitchen for a glass of water or something and could see into the family room. And my father was sitting there watching, and I could see these colorful people on a platform vanish.
Right.
And it wasn't until the second season of the show, I guess it was going into reruns, and in the summer I was allowed to stay up later. I finally started to see what this was all about. But you know, my dad was like science fiction and seemed to be a Star Trek fan from the get-go.
Now, is that something that you and your dad did together? Sci-fi.
Urged me. I mean, we didn't do a lot of science fiction together, but he obviously would watch that stuff as a fan on his own.
Right.
But as I started watching Star Trek and starting to read science fiction, he took me to Mid-Island Plaza, mall in the area, took me to the Cherry Hill bookstore, which was an independent bookstore in there, takes me to the science fiction section. He browses the shelves for a couple of minutes, hands me a paperback copy of a collection of short stories called Asimov's Mysteries. It says, "Here, try this." And that was my leap from junior science fiction to more adult science fiction.
Right. Now, did you have you had mentioned just a little while ago, it's this friend of yours, Jeff, who was a comics book guy. Did you have was it just him? Did you have other friends who were into the same stuff that you were into?
There was a handful of us in Jericho, but mostly it was Jeff and a couple of others who were much more casual readers, but Jeff and I were collectors.
And I'm talking not just comics. I'm talking about comics, science fiction.
Again, it was a handful of us. I mean,
Okay.
there was definitely a couple of guys who were a little more into the science fiction and the science behind science fiction. So like one ended up getting, going from science fiction into like ham radio, became really big into that.
Right.
So went into tinkering and building stuff with like the Heathkit electronic stuff from back then.
So I was a little too young when this came out to see it in the theater, but did you end up seeing 2001? Did you see that on the big screen when it came out?
So 1968, 2001 comes out. One of the kids across the street from me, his parents took a bunch of us for his birthday to the movie theaters at Mid-Island Plaza to see 2001: A Space Odyssey. I'm 10 years old and I have no idea what I'm watching.
That's right. That's a tough watch for a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a trip.
It was very tough, and I had to be a teenager to catch it in a re-release at some point, and said, "Oh,
I get it
now."
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So I'm going to skip around a little bit because I got a lot of stuff I want to cover. So let's go. So you're in college. Your parents moved out to the West Coast, and you took your siblings, moved out to the West Coast. You finish up college, and then in your travels, then you wound up starting a family. tell me about your family.
I met my wife Deb sophomore year at college. She had moved. I had moved dorms, as did my girlfriend at the time, who wound up on Deb's floor at college. So Deb and it was all part of a social circle. And Deb had a boyfriend. I had a girlfriend. We were just friends and part of a big social group. But the summer after sophomore year, I was out in California working the third shift at the bank that my father got me a job. And I was back when computers had everything on reels of tape.
Right.
I would have to go through the operating floor, gathering all the tape and putting it back in the tape library. I was responsible for that as I'm wandering around at 2 a.m, collecting stuff in a cart and then filing it all. It was just very tedious.
Right.
Youngest guy there, knew nobody, made no friends. It was just awkward.
Yeah.
So during my lunch breaks, I'd write long letters to whoever, I wrote to my brother, I wrote to my girlfriend, I wrote to Deb, I wrote to, other people. Junior year, she and her boyfriend were on the rocks. My girlfriend had dumped me. So, we were friends and started hanging out together. And it was more and more of us being together because other people had coupled up and, our circle had shrunk a little bit and things developed.
But if she was so you were in California, was she in California?
Well, that was the summer and I came back. Came back for junior, senior year with Binghamton.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I did apply to transfer to Berkeley on the off chance I wanted to stay in California to be near the family.
Right.
But then over the summer, I got a call from the school, the people at the school newspaper. The managing editor had transferred to Brown, and I was offered that position. And I said, I really wanted to get into publishing.
Right.
Told my parents, I really want to go back to Binghamton. I really want to, do this job at the school newspaper. So that sort of sealed my fate.
Okay. All right.
And picked up with Deb there.
Right.
We got engaged at the end of junior year, got married right after we graduated. So we graduated
What year was that?
1980, got married in October that year.
So you got married 1980. Okay.
And we had a plan. We wanted to get our careers on track. We wanted to save money. We wanted to have our first house. Then it was time to have kids. And right on schedule, Kate shows up in 1986.
That's right. Okay. All right. So, so you ended up having a daughter and also a son.
Right.
Now you've been, and just for everyone who's watching here, Bob and I spoke offline about this. So you've been quite open and public about a tragedy that you endured a little bit later in life concerning your son, Robbie. I know it's not an easy thing to discuss, but if you're willing, can you share a little bit of that with us?
Well, Robbie was born in 1988 and he was at community college when he was 20 years old.
Before that, just tell us a little bit about Robbie.
Okay, sure. He had ADHD. He was always on the go. He had great energy and passion for a lot of different things, but definitely his parents' child into all the geek stuff. He was not much of a reader except for the Harry Potter novels as they came out as he was growing up. But he liked listening to stuff on audio. Big fan of Jack London on audio, for example. And he had a million friends, most of whom were girls, just friends. And he loved convention life. To him, going to the Hunt Valley Inn for shore leave and Far Point every year was like, going to the summer house,
right,
for vacation. He was just friendly and passionate and energetic, and he was into doing theater, and he was trying to find his way in life, and he definitely did not do well as a freshman, and was trying to course correct as going to local community college to get his general ed credits out of the way so he could figure out what he really wanted to do. Because it was going here and there. Then January he was 19, and one Saturday morning we found him curled up in incredible pain on the couch, and he didn't want to bother us. But we took him to the pediatrician, who took one look at him and said, I don't know what it is, better take him for some tests. We went to a hospital. They sent us to Yale New Haven after they saw the blood work. And so that's Saturday night. By Sunday morning, they tell us it's leukemia. And began a 7-month odyssey where right up until the last couple of days, he kept thinking he would get better, he'd beat this, but because he had no immune system, while we were desperately trying to find bone marrow to match him to try a transfusion, he got a serious lung infection. They did some surgery. He still unfortunately deteriorated, and then that August he passed away.
Well, Bob, I appreciate that you're sharing that with us. I know I can't imagine it's easy to talk to. As a parent myself, the fear of, much less the reality of losing a child, is about as rough as it gets. And some families just don't survive that kind of tragedy. So how did you and your wife, if you don't mind sharing, how did you, your wife and your daughter, how did you guys sort of pull together and find some peace to move forward? Because in all the years I've known you,
okay,
I've always been really I've been very impressed by the fact that you are able to embrace your son for his life, and you move forward in a positive way, and that's not so easy.
During those 7 months, Deb and I were at the hospital just about every day together. We'd sit with him, we'd keep him occupied. We'd be there to talk to the doctors, to keep him occupied and busy. We did what we could, but in the meantime, I had my laptop. I was actually working on the Batman Vault book that I had contracted that, so I was working on that. Deb did what work she could from her laptop. If we needed to make calls or stuff, there were spaces where we could go off, leave him alone, let him nap or whatever. We were there for him and for each other. And it takes a village, because teenage girl down the block would come and take care of our dogs before and after school. Right. One of us would go home every night. The other one of us would sleep in the hospital room with him. Deb was taking grad courses, and Robbie insisted she not drop out and finish her coursework that spring. He, on the nights when, at the time I was an elected official in Connecticut, and on Monday nights we had our meetings, and he, those were the nights I would go back to Fairfield, Connecticut, where we were living at the time. He kept insisting that we should keep doing our thing.
Right.
And that gave us some sense of normalcy. But friends of ours from the neighborhood and from Deb's church also on their own organized food. And there was a large cooler in front of our front door. And every night, whoever came home would find food in the cooler that we'd either freeze or put in the fridge. And that kept us fed. We didn't have to cook for 7 months.
Right. Wow. Well, you know what? It's a testament to the quality of people that you and your family were and are, that engendered such support. So I know it mustn't have been easy, but I appreciate that you endured, and for sharing that. All right, so Bob, yes. So let's just for a moment, we're going to take a big time jump, and then we're going to bounce around. Okay, so currently you're a high school English teacher, sort of, which is not the typical pathway to that profession, coming into a little bit later than life. So how did that happen, given that it was later in life, and how's it been going? Okay,
so it's 2010. DC Comics had hired me to write a brand new version of the Who's Who comic book. It was going to be 18 months of steady work that, at the page rate I was getting at the time, plus any other freelance I had was enough for me to be full-time freelance working out of the house. But in 2010, two things happened. One, the iPad arrived. Two, management changed to DC Comics.
Mm.
When the iPad arrived, digital publishing became a thing. And all of a sudden, a lot of book publishers were like, wait a second, we don't know how to monetize this. We don't know. So we're not going to say yes to a lot of things at the moment until we figure this out. So the change of management at DC led to the cancellation of the Who's Who after I had written only 5 of 18 issues. Could not find work to replace it because all the publishers were like, we're not buying a lot right now because
Same reason.
there's all this, the business model was changing. So by 2011, Deb and I look at each other. It's like, I need a plan B. And Deb looked at me and she said, everyone's always said you'd make a good teacher. You've talked about it on and off. Maybe it's time. So I looked into it and I found an accelerated program at the University of Bridgeport, which was like 15 minutes from my house, where I could get my graduate degree in education and then get my teaching certification. I go through the program, I get my certification, and it's around that time Deb looks at me and she says, so this teaching certification, it's transferable anywhere, right? I said, yeah. She said, so rather than wait to retire and relocate to Maryland to be near where Kate is, because after she graduated college, she went to work for the government and she wasn't going anywhere.
Right.
We could go down and be near her. And I said, yeah, I guess we could. So, very short order from that conversation till 9 years ago, we put the house in the market. We sold it. We came down to Connecticut found a place. What was interesting is between the closing in Connecticut and the closing here in Maryland, there was like 3 weeks where Deb and I had no address. We're kind of homeless.
Right.
Living at Kate's apartment, sharing it with her, crashing on her couches. It was kind of weird.
It usually goes the other way.
Exactly. But as I came down to Maryland, I was started to apply to the various public schools in the area. And I had interviewed in Owings Mills, Maryland. And on my way to shore leave that year, the assistant principal calls to offer me the job as an English teacher at Owings Mills High School. And I taught there for 3 years. Then my contract was not renewed.
Remember that.
I spent a year trying to find another permanent teaching position. And for whatever reason, no one was making offers. I had a bunch of interviews. Nothing ever came of it. So Deb was singing in her church choir with Kate, was mentioning this to one of the other people in the choir, who said, well, I'm a guidance counselor at a private high school. We're always looking for substitutes. Why doesn't he come substitute with us? Keep his hand in.
Okay.
So I started substituting in St. Vincent Pallotti High School in Laurel, Maryland. And I was in almost every single day from October to May that year.
Right.
And by the end of May, 2 of the English teachers had tendered their notice to go elsewhere, which created an opening. I was there. By then, the principal and the department chair had gotten to know me. And so I interviewed and they made me an offer.
And so you've been there, what, about
It's
5?
Pallotti 6 full years now.
Right. Okay. So it must have been, we're going to have to move on. So just one last question. So
Sure.
What is it like now being in the classroom post-COVID?
To our school's credit, we shut in 2019 when everybody else shut down from March to May, finished the school year virtual. And it was asynchronous, so we would post work and be available online for kids as needed. The following year, we were hybrid, where kids came in twice a week. And we stayed open all the time. I was in the classroom all that time. I was in there 4 days a week. Fortunately, I never caught COVID during all this, but I recognized hybrid teaching didn't work. They came to school the following year and couldn't remember anything we did.
Right.
Retained nothing. it was really a lost year.
Yeah.
I'm getting in kids last year and this year. I teach freshmen, and these freshmen are socially and academically not ready for high school, because high school is a big leap from middle school.
That's right. Yeah, I got
So the challenge for me is to figure out where the deficits are and how to patch them up while still delivering a full year of regular curriculum.
right. Yeah, my kids are both in middle school right now, and we'll see how it goes. All right, so Bob, so we've jumped around, so now we're gonna jump back a little bit, and then we're gonna come forward and full circle. All right,
Sure.
so let's go back. So you tinkered, you wrote. When did you really start being serious as a writer editor? When did that really kind of take shape?
I started writing as early as my junior high school newspaper, and then the high school newspaper, college. And I really thought I was going to be a newspaper man or magazine or something in print publishing like that. But in 1980, there was an economic downturn and there wasn't a lot of hiring going on. And I knew I wanted to be some sort of a writer during all that time. It never occurred to me to do fiction or book stuff at that stage. I had a job interview at Omni magazine at one point with Ben Bova when he was editor, but that's when there was a rail strike and I couldn't get into the set.
Jeez.
So that never happened. But by the time that sorted itself out, the only person to make me an offer out of about 4 dozen different publishers I wrote to was Kerry O'Quinn at Starlog Press. Now, I had been reading Starlog from issue number 1 in 1976. So the idea of going to work for Starlog Press was a big deal in my mind.
Right.
That stuff. And I said, this is a perfect blend of my interest in journalism and science fiction.
Right.
Kerry liked me, offered me the job to work on Fangoria. And thank goodness, because I needed a job and I was graduating. I was going to get married. I had to be making some money.
All right, so you were there for a bit. You had a few twists and turns.
Yeah.
You spent a bunch of time. You worked for both at different times, for DC and for Marvel Comics.
Right.
They're both during interesting times in their evolution. So first, I know you grew up as a comics fan, so that must have been interesting.
Oh yeah.
So
what was true?
What was it like to be working in the comics really during a really exciting time in comics?
I got to DC in January 1984, just as the company was planning all its 50th anniversary stuff, The Crisis on Infinite Earths and Who's Who. And I was specifically hired for both projects, but along the way, I was tasked with working on other projects. And all of a sudden, I'm now working with so many writers and artists who I grew up reading. Because I was reading these guys I was reading them during their peak, and now I was starting to work with them as their careers were starting to wind down.
So who are some of your like hero writers that you got to then work with? Like, just give me a couple.
I was hired by Len Wein and Marv Wolfman and Dick Giordano in DC to work with Len and Marv on stuff. And Len and Marv's stuff, as I read their stuff, Marv's Tome of Dracula in the 1970s, Len's Spider-Man, and then Thor runs were really memorable. So that was really exciting to work with them day to day. But then, starting to talk to guys like Jerry Conway, who I had known through some of the convention circuit of the 1970s, Doug Mensch, starting to work with these guys. But it was the legendary artists that really made the impression on me, because all of a sudden here I am handing work to Gil Kane, editing Kurt Swan on some stuff, Murphy Anderson, Carmine Infantino. I mean, these were, to me, the gods of DC, and I'm handing them work and working with them, and
right,
sitting around chatting with them. It's just like mind blowing.
Okay, so Bob, I still got a lot I want to ask, so I'm going to skip around again. So just a quick interlude for folks who came in a little late. If you have any questions or comments for Bob, send them in the chat box, and we'll get to a few at the end. All right, so I'm going to skip ahead again a little bit, still tying into your sci-fi comic connective tissue here. So
sure.
At one point, you had a little bit of a dance with Hollywood. Tell us about your time collaborating on a project that starred a pre-slap Will Smith.
So Peter David had been contacted by Will Smith's production company, Overbrook, to do some work on a project that never happened. But Peter made a good impression on Will and his brother-in-law, Caleb Pinkett. And then Will starts working with Columbia on developing After Earth. And Will contacts Peter and he says, I need this backstory material prepared because we think this is going to be a big franchise. We need to build out the world. Can you do it? And I need it, in 3 months or 5 months or whatever it was. And Peter said, I can't, but I've got some friends. We could do it together. So Peter calls me and Michael Jan Friedman, and we get on a conference call with Caleb, who starts outlining what they need, and they send some material to us, including the script. And then the three of us get on, having read the stuff and brainstormed, and we divvied up what each of us were doing. And when we were done, we had prepared a 300-page Bible and timeline of the 1,000 years between man leaving Earth and the events of the movie After Earth. And during this period, they contracted with Random House to do a prequel novel and a novelization and 6 ebooks and a prequel comic. And, like, we're dealing with Hollywood stuff. So all of a sudden, they're flying us to the San Diego Comic-Con a year in advance to promote the forthcoming film. We're invited down to Philadelphia for be there at M. Night Shyamalan's production company. So Peter, Mike, and I jump in the car and we drive down to Philly and spend the day on the set. And there we are hanging out with Will Smith in his trailer, eating cupcakes, and he's basically acting out for us this other movie he's developing that he was going to direct. That never happened. But it was like, oh my God. And then
so what was it? So how was Will Smith? Was he cool to work with?
He was very friendly. He was very collaborative. He was very respectful when one of us had a question or had an idea for something based on what he was talking about. So it was probably one of the best collaborative experiences you would want at that earliest stage before the film comes out. Right. Unfortunately, this is the time when Peter had his stroke.
Right.
He had to step back from what he was working on. So Mike and I had to step in and help him finish the novelization. And then when it was time to do extras for the DVD, Peter was not well enough to travel, I guess. Mike was preoccupied with his teaching because he was also a teacher at that point. So I went out to California, and this is the year I moved to Maryland. So I go out to California to be interviewed part of a day for the extras, and I'm on screen on the DVD extras for about 3.5 minutes.
Cool.
Thinking of all the money they spent to fly me out, put me up, feed me. On the other hand, it did mean I got to sit in the screening room with Jaden Smith, who hadn't seen the cut film yet, with Jaden Smith and a couple of his friends, and I'm sitting a couple rows behind, and Will pops in and out at different points. And then when the movie's over, I'm standing there with Jaden and Will talking about the film, and Will had already decided he wanted some edits changed to the opening. And I knew from the script that there was stuff filmed that I thought was missing that needed to go back in to fill out Jaden's character a little bit. And
right.
was listening to me very intently as I was explaining the whys and wherefores. So again, it was collaborative.
Wow, that's great.
With suggestions. But then the movie, screened. We were invited to the premiere, and we were there for the premiere party in New York. And then the movie opens Friday, gets scathing reviews.
Right.
Sunday morning, we get an email from Caleb Pinkett that says, "Thanks, guys, franchise over."
Oh, God. What a gut punch, huh?
And yeah, we really thought we could parlay this into more After Earth work, or certainly more work with Overbrook, or use that as a stepping stone to other production companies. Never happened. It was like really, really such an intoxicating taste of what might have been.
Now, based on what you saw, let's say in the original script, did you look at this and say, you know what? If they film this the way you can see that's on the page, we're going to have something special, or did you kind of look at it and go, I really want this to be good, but I don't know about this.
I can't speak for Mike and Peter, but I know we had read the script once and then started deconstructing it to do our part of the project.
Right.
And I really never stopped to seriously think, how is this going to translate? Is this going to be a really good movie or not?
Right.
The one thing I think we all agreed on was Will was not necessarily the right actor to be the father in this. The dynamic and the vibe is very different, and it certainly wasn't what his fans expected. But we really didn't get a feel for this was not coming together as we had hoped until we saw the premiere screening.
Right. So when you sat there, seeing the movie, could you tell that this just isn't working, or were you surprised that it didn't do well? Or
I sitting in the screening room with Jaden, it wasn't wowing me like I had hoped to be wowed, but then I knew it was still being edited, and I thought, all right, they're still shaping the story, so maybe I'll get wowed later.
Right.
Again, what was filmed, what was in the script, didn't come together.
Disappointing. Well, you know what? Hey, it's a lot closer than most people ever get.
Right. No question about it. It was an amazing experience. It was terrific collaborating with Mike and Peter in a new way. And it was some very nice money.
Very good. All right. So one last, so
Sure.
In your travels, you were one of the co-founders of what is now Crazy 8 Press. For those who are watching who are unaware of Crazy 8 Press, what is Crazy 8 Press, and what is this endeavor? What has it meant for you?
So you may recall, digital publishing arrived and nobody knew what this meant. What it did mean for a lot of people was self-publishing was becoming an option now. And while the mainstream publishers kept saying to us, we don't think we can sell this, we don't think we can market this, it's not what we're looking for, we're not buying a lot of mid-list stuff. It was a whole mess of us going, we're not selling like we used to. We've got passion projects we can't seem to get anyone interested in. And in discussing this and commiserating at a shore leave convention, the idea of us forming a consortium to self-publish went from a discussion to a reality in a year. We started publishing, and here we are 11 years later, still publishing. And it really is a nice group of guys, and guys, men and women collectively, who support and share our passions, and we help each other promote and market our material. We help edit each other's stuff. We publish what we want, stories we want, genres we're interested in, and you don't have to pigeonhole it. So
That's right.
I want to do a modern day Aztec murder mystery detective, Mike's got something for you. You want to do, a parody of vampire stories, Peter's got something for you.
Right.
You want two-fisted adventures in the old Pulp style? Come see me, I got stuff.
That's right. All right, good stuff. Okay. All right, Bob, that was great, but now it's time for the special time on the show where we spin the wheel on the wheel of 7 possible categories.
I can't reach it from here.
Too bad. Wherever it lands is what you get, in the categories.
Okay.
Batman versus Superman, Stranger in a Strange Land, Name That Quote, Cinema Slice Up, Music Lover, Quantum Leap, and as always, everyone's new favorite, Kick 'Em in the Junk. All right, you ready?
Let's do it.
There we go. Round and round. Where she stops. Who knows? No whammies. Come on, baby. What do we got?
Don't kick me in the junk.
Well, we'll see. The night's not over. And you got, the perfect one for you, Bob. Batman versus Superman.
I've heard of them.
Eric, it's one of the most famous comic book nerd questions of all time and has even been handled on the page. But if you were the one writing the words, who would win in a fight between Batman and Superman?
The characters have lent themselves to various interpretations through the years. I've always subscribed to the Grant Morrison interpretation of Batman being the most prepared crime fighter of all time. So he would outthink and outprepare to handle Superman, and has all of that training from all the masters of different disciplines from around the world. So whereas Superman is trained and super strong and super fast and all that, Batman would have a plan for any of those superpowers and be prepared. So I would lean towards Batman.
All right, going a little Frank Miller. Okay, good for you. All right, so next up, we're gonna pick. Now it's time for you to pick your poison. I've got 3 choices for you: A, B, or C. I'm not going to tell you what's behind each one because I've got some new questions. So which do you pick? You got A, B, or C?
I'm going to go with C.
C. All right, and C is success or bust. Okay, so writers often talk about, think about, and are asked about what it means to be successful. But every writer has their own definition of success, which may change at various stages of their careers. So given where you are today, what is your definition of success as a writer and editor? And how does that definition compare, if at all, to when you first started writing seriously?
I think initially when I started writing, my definition of success was getting some mainstream publisher to want to pay to have me write something for them and actually see it in print. Pretty low bar. These days, my definition of success is where a publisher would come to me and pair me with a really strong editor to get the very best out of me and let me take the time to make the book what it should be rather than I need it in 30 days. Right. And I think I've earned enough cred to get that kind of time and that kind of attention. But, that has not happened. So I haven't.
It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time. All right, fair enough. All right, so Bob, so now we're going to give you, I'm going to slip you a little truth serum. I'm going to ask you 10 questions. You're going to answer quickly, okay? All right, here we go. Favorite flavor ice cream?
Oh, chocolate.
What's one food you will never eat ever for any reason?
Escargot.
Bucket list destination anywhere in the world?
Man, Deb keeps asking me that. I'm not sure I've got a single top bucket list destination.
Pick one.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never been to France. I'd love,
Okay, fair enough. France it is. All right. Scariest movie you ever saw?
I was young enough where Count Yorger vampire scared me.
Okay, I don't know that one. Interesting. Okay, if you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Even though I've got a fear of heights, I would like to fly. I think there was just something so elegant about when Superman does it, especially Chris Reeve, Superman, yes, that I want to do that. I want to see what it feels like.
That wouldn't be half bad, now would it? All right. Do you play any musical instruments? And if not, which one if you could?
I do not play any musical instruments. In 3rd grade, we all had to learn to play hot cross buns on the recorder to determine if we could play an instrument. I was sent to chorus.
Okay, so that's what you want to do? You want to play the recorder?
No, I don't. Nope. I just don't have the gene for
it. So even if you could, you don't want to play any instrument? No desire?
Nope.
Interesting. Oh, okay, fair enough. All right, you can only have one. Perpetually fantastic good luck or solid skill?
Skill.
Okay. Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
You can see a live performance, sports, music, theater, whatever. Any seat, any venue. What's your choice?
Oh, probably first row seat at a Springsteen concert.
All right. Where? What venue?
Oh, venue. Wow. Oh man, I'm forgetting the name of the place in Greenwich Village, where he did the 75 concert. Oh shoot, I can't remember the name of it. Keep thinking my father's place, but that's Roslyn, Long Island. I'll come back to the name of the venue, but it's a small club, so that it's intimate.
Okay, last one. If you could have one personal do-over in life, what would it be?
One do-over in life. Just might be not leaving DC the first time I was there.
Why?
I left it for an internet startup during the hot 1999-2000 era, and I wound up at Just Communications, and it wasn't the best experience. And I got out just before the bubble burst, and I was 6 weeks away from being laid off. So had I stayed at DC, I might have, gone in a different direction. I don't know.
All right, fair enough. All right. That was great, Bob. We got a couple of minutes. We're going to take some questions from the audience. Question for Bob. How gratifying was it to give new creators exposure as comic professions?
It was tremendously exciting to be able to look at talented conventions or through the slush pile that we got in the mail and see a diamond in the rough that you can work with and bring along. Tremendously gratifying, especially a handful that continue to work in the business today. So it's like, I'm responsible for that.
All right. Like what?
There's a guy like, named Matt Haley, who started with us on the Star Trek Next Generation comic with Michael Jan Friedman. And he's still doing comic book stuff and Hollywood stuff even. So, put him on a good path.
All right. So question for Bob. Do you have a favorite Batman animated series? Which one captured the character best in your opinion?
Probably Batman V animated series, the 1992 one from Bruce Timm.
Good stuff. That was good stuff. All right, so I'm going to go back. We have time there was one more question. I had a few other questions we didn't have a chance to get to. So you mentioned it briefly before, but as part of Crazy 8 Press, you've been the editor of 2 volumes so far, with a 3rd on the way. So talk to me about Thrilling Adventure Yarns.
When I was developing as a reader, this is when Lancer was reprinting the Conan novel or Conan stories of Robert E. Howard. It's when Pyramid and Bantam were doing the Doc Savage and the Shadow reprints. So I was exposed to a lot of the classic pulp heroes, and then got to hear them in the radio serials and then other pulp reprint collections. So I really enjoyed the mystique and the era of the pulp magazines. So when Crazy 8 was doing all these different anthologies to act as showcases for the Crazy 8 writers, it occurred to me that, I love the pulps. It would be really kind of fun to do a modern day collection similar to the magazines. So I tried it and kickstarted it and was very gratified with the results, and keep going until I lose money and my wife says stop.
Yeah, but I think you're leaving out kind of an exciting piece of these collections, that we have original fiction from.
Well, we have original fiction from I've been now calling him our patron saint. It's Lester Dent, who is the pulp writer hired by Street and Smith to create Doc Savage, and under the house name of Kenneth Robeson.
That's right. And throughout these anthologies, what are some of the subgenres that readers might find across these several anthologies?
Western, war, aviation, two-fisted crime fighters, the occult, detective mysteries, romance.
That's right. And so there's 2 volumes out,
of course.
Right, and there's two out so far. And when's the 3rd one coming out?
Well, that's a good question.
Unfortunately,
some of my writers this time around were a little bit tardy, and that meant my artists were full, could not draw what's not been written. I'm about 5 pieces of art and 1 story, Glenn Howman, away from being finished. So even though I promised everyone a December delivery date, this might slip into early 2023.
All right. It's coming. All right. We got one last one for you, Bob. Question for Bob. Any advice to writers on editing their own stories?
Great question. And I'm not the best one to answer that because I'm not a really good self-editor. The first thing you got to do is finish it and put it in the drawer. Hopefully at least a week, if not longer, if you've got the time. Let it really get it out of your mind and out of your soul, so you're reading it with somewhat fresh eyes. And then take your time, chapter at a time, really reread, make sure that the plot works, your dialogue, your character development, it all works. And the fresher your eye, the better you can be at being self-critical.
All right, fair enough. All right, thanks, Bob. So we talked about some of your books. I'm going to share my screen now, folks. And let's see, we have some other goodness to share, so just bear with me for a minute. Hopefully I do this right. Okay, so Bob, talk to me. What do we got here?
So a few years ago, I did a project for Athon Books, and they liked it so well that when CEO of Heavy Metal Magazine, Matt Medney, was contracting with Athon to do a new trilogy of science fiction, he said, I need a co-writer. And they said, oh, you want to work with Bob. So they put me and Matt together, and we did this, Above the Ground. It is an original science fiction story. It will be 3 volumes. It's got some really outrageous ideas. The first book, as you see the cover there, the ebook will be available next week from Athon Books. The print book, because of supply chain issues, is now slated for December 13th. And this takes place 100 years from now. And in 2021, all the Native Americans vanished instantaneously. And 100 years later, we find out where they went, which turns out to be below the ground. And things happen above the ground that requires the people below the ground to get involved. And, I don't want to give too much away,
Okay.
I've left, but it's got a lot of big ideas. Hidden civilizations, nuclear war,
Wow.
splintering nation states in the United States of America. Lot of big ideas. And Matt had all those big ideas. I helped put the humanity behind it all and ground it a little bit, so to speak.
Where can folks get this?
Well, you can order off Amazon right now. The pre-order page is available for the print book, and like I said, they also will have the Kindle edition, other digital versions through Athon, AETHON Books, athonbooks.com, and I understand there might even be an audio version in early 2023.
All right, very cool. That sounds really great. As for me, if you're up for a little pulpy twist with your private eye fiction, I'll encourage you to check out my ongoing sci-fi noir series featuring hard-boiled private detective Angela Hardwick, in my mind, part Blade Runner, part Doctor Who, part Atomic Blonde. The first 3 books in the series include Crackle and Fire, Fractured Lives, and Hot Ash, which just came out about a month ago. They're all standalone mysteries that can be read in any order, but there is some character development throughout, so your mileage may vary depending on whether you like to be in from the action from the beginning or jump in with whichever plot line leaps out the most. All 3 Hardwick novels are available on Amazon and published by Crazy 8 Press, and right now I'm in the middle of writing book 4 with a pub date of September 23.
Did I ever tell you how much I like the title font?
You didn't, but thank you. I like it as well. All right. So I want to thank Bob for coming on and talking to us and sharing about your life and your career. And I want to thank everyone who's at home, who's watching us. And if you want to see me in person, I'll be at PhilCon in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, the weekend of November 18th through 20th. And tune in next Wednesday for my season finale on the roller coaster. Until then, I will see you all next week. Take care, everyone. Good show.
Bye now.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I'll talk to you soon. All right. Bye.